If you've been scrolling through endless lists of 11-inch scopes, watching video after video trying to decide whether the extra aperture is worth the extra bulk, you're not alone. I've been in that exact spot comparing a handful of GoTo telescopes, wondering if the promised maximum light gathering actually translates into nighttime results, and worrying that I might end up with a massive tube that sits in the garage forever. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk through what the Celestron CPC Deluxe HD 11-inch really does when you take it out of the box, who will get the most mileage out of it, and where the value actually lives beyond the headline specs. First off, let's talk about the core promise of any large aperture telescope: light. An 11-inch primary mirror gathers roughly 3 times more photons than a typical 8-inch Dobsonian, which means fainter nebulae, tighter planetary detail, and smoother background gradients for imaging. The CPC Deluxe HD uses Celestron's Starbright XLT Coating, a multi-layer process that pushes reflectivity up into the high 90% range and cuts down on scattered light. In plain language, that coating lets you see the faint glow of the Orion Nebula or the wispy arms of the Andromeda Galaxy with less glare and more contrast, especially when you're shooting from a suburban backyard with moderate light pollution. But raw light isn't the whole story. The HD in the name isn't just marketing fluff. The telescope is built around Celestron's top-performing Altazimuth GoTo system. The mount includes an all-star polar alignment routine that walks you through a few star selections, then automatically fine-tunes the polar alignment to a degree of accuracy that would normally require a separate polar scope or a lot of patience. In real-world terms, that means you can get a solid alignment in roughly 10 minutes, even if you've never done a polar alignment before. Once that's set, the GoTo database, which holds over 40,000 objects, will point you directly at the target and track it smoothly enough for long-exposure astrophotography without the need for a separate auto-guiding system. Now, the practical side of setting this thing up. The tube itself is a solid, well-balanced 11-inch optical tube assembly (OTA) that weighs just under 30 pounds. The mount, with its motorized axes and built-in battery pack, adds another 35 pounds. If you have a dedicated observatory or a sturdy permanent pier, the weight isn't a problem at all. The real challenge shows up when you try to bring it to a dark site location. You'll need a decent-sized car, a ramp, or a low-profile dolly, and at least 2 people to lift and balance the OTA onto the fork. For someone who plans to keep the scope in a backyard and only move it a few yards to a nearby parking lot, that's manageable. For a casual weekend astronomer who wants to drive to a remote field and set up in under an hour, the logistics can become a deterrent. One of the hidden trade-offs of the CPC Deluxe HD is power consumption. The GoTo motors draw about 68 amps when tracking, which drains the internal battery in roughly 3 to 4 hours of continuous use. Celestron sells an optional AC adapter, and most serious imagers will run the scope off a portable power station or a campsite generator. If you're hoping to run the whole night off the internal pack without a backup, you'll find yourself watching the battery indicator dip faster than you'd like. That's not a deal breaker, but it's something you need to plan for, especially if you're interested in deep sky imaging sessions that last 6 hours or more. So who should actually consider buying this telescope? If you're an intermediate to advanced visual observer who already owns a smaller Dobsonian or a refractor, and you've been itching for that extra depth on deep sky objects, the CPC Deluxe HD is a natural step up. The combination of a large, well-coated mirror and a reliable GoTo system means you'll spend more time looking and less time hunting. The scope is also ready for serious astroimaging, as Celestron puts it, and that's not an overstatement. The stable Altazimuth platform, combined with the precise polar alignment routine, provides a solid foundation for stacking long exposures of galaxies, nebulae, and even planetary detail with a DSLR or a dedicated astro camera. If you already have a camera and a few basic accessories, you can start taking decent images right out of the box. Conversely, if you're brand new to astronomy, or if you primarily want a portable, quick setup instrument for casual backyard sessions, you might want to look elsewhere. The learning curve of a GoTo mount is not steep, but mastering the polar alignment and dealing with the weight can feel overwhelming for a first-time user. A smaller, fully manual Dobsonian or a tabletop refractor can deliver spectacular views with far less setup time and no need for power sources. Moreover, the CPC Deluxe HD's price point lands it in the upper mid-range market. If you're budgeting tightly, the money you spend on the mount and power accessories could